What is up, everybody? Welcome to another BGH Connect stream. I am super pumped about today's episode because we have community being talked about. And as you know, I love community. I love everything about it. And so I'm really excited to bring these two nice, handsome fellas on. Oh, handsome. I don't know about that. But let's welcome the awesome guys of Galactic Cruise and Kinson Key Games. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
I like that. Hello, hello. We are here.
I like your intro song. Can we just go back to that?
Yeah, man,
we were kind of jamming
okay,
to it.
let's rewind. Yeah, no, let's not. I hear that enough all the time. But yeah, so I'm really excited to have both of you on because, as we all know, Galactic Cruise is doing really well. Every time I go online, I'm like, "Oh, you know Galactic Cruise, right?" And they're like, "Yes, we know those guys. They're awesome. They do a great job." So you have a really good presence online and overall great community. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how important grassroots marketing is because, yeah, it's not as expensive, right? It's expensive with time, but it's not expensive in advertising. So let's go ahead and introduce both of you guys. First, tell us a little bit about how you both got into game design. And yeah, let's do that first.
Well, I've been playing kind of really heavy games, well, all sorts of games with my game group for like over 16 years or so. We have a weekly game day at my house. So I've been into board games, designer board games, pretty heavy for a long time, but more recently got into game design. I guess kind of how I got into it is what I like both Euro games like Galactic Cruise, but I also like more the Ameritrash, like dungeon crawler type games. And I was like, you know what? I wish that one of these dungeon crawlers did something this way. And so my first game that I created was like more of a Ameritrash dungeon crawler type game. And so that's what kind of got me into it. And then I started going to different conventions and met TK at Proto ATL. And that's kind of how we got connected and how I got started.
Yeah. And so Colton and I grew up together. So our families both went to the same church. And so we kind of grew up together in youth group. And we've always loved designing games. Like I did some for a class project. We've designed a couple of like casino games that we would play with our friends. And so when COVID hit, we had a little extra time. We designed a game, kind of a resource management game. A lot of our friends liked it. And so they were like, hey, put it up on Kickstarter. So we did. That was kind of our first taste of publishing, actually putting a game that we had made out. And so when we did that, we were like, man, we love this process. And so that's kind of when we dove deep into designing games, getting them up on Tabletop Simulator, and trying to find something that we would want to potentially pursue as kind of like our first big game that we would publish. And so I think starting out, we just kind of enjoyed designing, but then through the process discovered that we loved like the business side of publishing. And so that's kind of where we're at now, is all three of us are kind of pursuing that and wanting to do that, full time.
Yeah, that's awesome. The business side of publishing is something, you don't hear a lot of people say they love, right?
Right.
So it's definitely not something I love. But it's really exciting to hear that, you guys also love that, because marketing is one thing, but really being into the business is another thing. That's your game can be awesome, but if you're not good with business, it can fall flat, right? So it's awesome to hear that you guys are really diving heavily into both sides of it. Let's do a quick shout out to all the people that are here. Brandon, Joshua, Colton. I don't know who the Colton is, but here. Bob, Kyle, and Matthew are all here as well. So they're popping through the comments. I'll get to you when I can, but we got a lot of things to cover here. So it's you two and then Colton as Kinson Key Games, right? So can you describe just the company? What's your values as a company?
Yeah, so it started out just me and Colton, and then we met Dennis at Proto ATL, and he kind of developed from like a playtester to a developer to a partner in the company. I don't know what your next step is. Just, you're going to take it over from us, I guess. Yeah, so like our aim is to design medium to heavy weight games that are, approachable and very thematic. We like to say that we're theme forward. Like a lot of our games don't necessarily start with theme, but as we design them, we want theme to be a focus as we kind of develop them. So we call that theme forward. And so that's going to be kind of our focus, is to, design those medium to heavy games that are theme forward. and we may kind of branch out from that. Like, I know Colton especially loves, light medium games a little more than we do. And so like a lot of his designs and even some of my earlier designs are on that lighter scale. And so we may, eventually get to do some of those. We may even do some heavier games in the future. But I think right now we're going to focus on that medium to heavy and kind of really dial in that market for who we want to reach.
Heavier games. Wait, you're saying Galactic Cruise is not that heavy?
It's a
No,
filler.
it's a filler game. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
light, family friendly filler game.
Right.
No, that's really cool. I've loved, I've watched you guys from the beginning, and so for me, it's really cool to be on this side and look at you now and be like, you guys are crushing it, and it's like from the beginning, Galactic Cruise early playtest. Obviously, like it's not a game for me. Like it's just a little heavier than what I would normally play.
Right.
But even for me, when I played it the first time, a long time ago, there was a lot of things I liked about it, and so I'm sure it's improved vastly and gotten so much better. Yeah. So let's get right onto the topic here. Let's talk about grassroots marketing. In your definition, what do you think grassroots marketing is?
Sure. So I'd say grassroots marketing is, more of building things naturally, building them slower. Definitely like a slower start at the beginning. It's the opposite. I guess, the normal marketing would be just like blasting out a bunch of ads or something like that. Grassroots marketing would be more like making connections with people, showing them the game. When they enjoy it, they tell somebody else, and just kind of like a slow build. So that's definitely more my speed. I mean, I'm even TK is really the marketing guy of the two, and just to kind of something earlier on, you were mentioning that if you have the greatest game, you need to have some marketing, and I'll say that if that doesn't fit you, just find somebody that will join you or will help you with that, because I was never one for marketing, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to start a company on my own if that's what I was looking to do. I was looking more at just like game design. And so that was why it was such a good fit to join these guys, because TK and Colton are both really out there doing the grassroots marketing. But for me, like, so I've always, any marketing I've ever done was always and only grassroots, just very like, just like, just meeting somebody and showing them the game and talking about it and stuff. I didn't even do much online. So mine was even at a slower growth rate than some of the Facebook stuff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. And I think if I had to pick one word for grassroots marketing, it would be personal. Like, I think it's just that personal connection, like you said, with people, connecting with people. And that's one thing I love doing. It's just like meeting new people, building relationships, and especially trying to be like a positive kind of influence or like help people any chance I get. And so that's why I love being a part of like the design community, is there's a lot of people who help each other, which I think is really cool and really kind of is the basis of that grassroots marketing.
Yeah. And I think for you guys both said it. For me, the one word is connection, because grassroots marketing is everything connection. It's word of mouth. It's getting personal. You can advertise forever, but then really, that's a company first kind of thing. Like, oh, we are the company, right? But you guys are taking it the grassroots way, where it's like, oh, we are TK, Dennis, Colton, the guys from Galactic Cruise, Kinson Key, right? So it's like very personal. And that is, I'll give you the formal definition. I had to bring it up because, we all have our own definition, right? So grassroots marketing is an approach you use to target highly specific audiences. In many marketing approaches, the goal is to reach as many people as possible, right? Instead, a grassroots marketing approach aims to engage with a smaller audience and encourage them to promote the brand via word of mouth. So everything we just said, right? We start small, and it's a long, grindy process. But to me, it builds super fans. It builds branding. It builds a long-term company. I've worked with a couple companies that are like, they thought they were doing grassroots marketing, but really it was one project base. This project. Well, if you do it that way, right, there's not really a long-term community, because every project is kind of like their own small community. What you guys are doing with this is, I mean, you have 720 on your Facebook right now, people, and very engaged community. We'll go over that here in a little bit, but you're building super fans, kind of like Stonemeyer. You're building brand ambassadors through word of mouth. And I know one big thing you guys like to do is playtest is marketing. And I love that as well. It's like you guys playtest your butt off all the time. I'm seeing you out and helping other people. And because of that, obviously there's, hey, we have a game now too, right? So if you want to playtest that, we kind of trade services and stuff like that. And I love that you guys do that. And I think that's a perfect definition of grassroots marketing. So have you guys, how long have you really I know it's been 3 years, 2 years?
I think we're 2.5 right
Two
now.
and a half? Yeah, I thought it was roughly 3 years because right when I joined the industry, is kind of when we started talking.
Yeah, so many of us joined at the same time.
I know.
During COVID, and yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was so funny to see all the guys that join us at the same time, and now
Right.
where we're all at, different places. But
Yeah.
so it like I said earlier, it's a little bit of a long-term grindy process. Is that something you guys ever get tired of? Are you wore out ever with this process, or do you just get building on and thriving more with this process?
I would say it's tiring, but I don't get tired of it. Obviously, it's a lot of hours, right? A lot of late nights. I think the last 3 years, I've stayed up later than I have my entire life just to finish a playtest, right? Or to hear feedback. And so it's definitely tiring. But there's a lot of things that we implement. I think one of your questions that we can hit later if you want, is just how do you stay motivated, right? There's a lot of things you can do to stay motivated. And I think those are important. And so, but yeah, it's definitely very tiring. But I think because we love the process from start to finish, not just the game design, that keeps it exciting, right? And so you have that motivation to keep going.
I think if we're specifically talking about playtesting, that if it's really tiring, not just in the sleep deprivation way, but you're not enjoying the process, that could tell you something about your game that maybe needs to be improved. Because certainly it's not going to be as fresh and exciting for you on the 200th time compared to their first time or whatever. But if you're hating every moment of it, maybe that's something to look at, an opportunity of what about your game or the playtest is not as exciting for you. Because I think it definitely helps playing a game. Even when we've played it so many times, even when I'm not playing, I'm just watching other people play, I still enjoy it. So to me, it's not as tiring in that sense, just because I'm still having a fun time with them and seeing them have fun. So it definitely helps to have a really fun game that can be played many times.
Yeah, and you have to have that passion for the game, right? I've had games designed where I thought right away I was all in, and excited. And then after some playtesting, I lost that passion. And so I know that's not something I want to grind in and do the long-term community marketing stuff with. So I quickly realized, okay, let's move on and do something else. But once you find that game like Galactic Cruise that you're so passionate about, the marketing comes easy, right? It's just, we are so excited to play the game and so excited to bring new people in that it's easy to be pursuing grassroots marketing and stuff like that. So I'm going to jump to some comments because we actually got a ton of comments here. So earlier, Bob asked, March Kickstarter launch, April delivery, right? I can't wait.
That would be amazing.
We have, Isaac's here pitching in. Give us the 18 to 30 second elevator pitch of Galactic Cruise.
Sure. Yeah. So Galactic Cruise is one of the first companies to offer extended stay space flights, basically taking cruises into outer space. And so we as the players work as supervisors of the company to help build and launch these shuttles to send them to different destinations. So that's kind of the thematic hook. The mechanic hook would be, it's a very positive worker placement, more like a sandbox action selection worker placement, to where other players can't block you, but you can bump them to give them bonuses. And so you can really craft your own strategy and pursue it and not be blocked out or kind of thwarted by other players.
Okay. Crushed it.
I've only said it 4,000 times.
Right. Drew asks, I know you are all testing at tons of conventions, but with the grassroots marketing of strictly testing other designers' games, do you have any concerns that other game designers are not necessarily your target audience?
Yes and no. I love playtesting other people's stuff, connecting with the designers. And yeah, sure, sometimes they want to, play your game after you've played their game, or maybe there's other people around the table that want to play your game. So I mean, it's definitely a part of it. But for me, it's just more about building relationships and connections. Like I would say, there's so many cases of like I play test somebody's game and they know somebody that I get to connect with, and so it's just about building those networks of connections more so than I think finding your target audience in playtesting other people's games. I mean, I think you will pick up a few, but I think more than anything, it's just about meeting new people and connecting with new people, because it eventually cycles, right? It'll eventually result in somebody down the line. So I think it's all worth it, even though it is, very time consuming.
So I agree with everything TK said, but I just wanted to add, just in case they were asking specifically. So, like say for example, let's take you, Devin. So if you play Galactic Cruise and it's not really your type of game, I'm not going to try to force you to keep playing it or something like that. Like so I think there is an aspect of, if it's not going to fit somebody, because you're not, you never try making a game that's going to be fun for everyone, because you'll make something that's just terrible if you try to please every single person. So I do think that there is like make those connections, play other people's games, even maybe out of your comfort zone, but don't expect everyone to, want to play a 3-hour game or something if they're not going to be into it.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
But it's even an interesting perception of designers, because if you're playing with a designer who doesn't like the game, but the game is cool and does something unique, and they notice it, they're probably going to mention it to somebody that they know who might like it, right?
Right.
And so that's that word of mouth, grassroots marketing, just kind of skipping over the people that aren't necessarily interested, but they end up telling somebody else about it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I fall in, right? It's like it's a heavier game for me, but I loved some things about it, and I loved what you guys were doing with it. So, I always tell the world about the game and your company, because I believe in it. Let's jump to community, because I know there's some community questions here. The first question I have is: are there any partnerships or collaborators, like influencers, bloggers, or other individuals that have really played a role in the grassroots marketing so far, or is it kind of just been you guys at the forefront?
I would say most so far it's just been us at the forefront. We haven't really reached out to a lot of influencers or bloggers or anything. I think what's been great about kind of a slow grassroots process is, as long as you have a great product that people are interested in, throughout that grassroots process, those influencers and bloggers will notice it and approach you. And so you're not having to say, hey, do you want to check out my game? They're like, hey, can I check it out? And that's a much easier connection, right? And so that's kind of been our process over the last, 6 months or so of being on BGG, going to all the big conventions, is people are starting to see it. And so they're able to approach us as opposed to us approaching them, which has been really great and helpful. I think probably the biggest influencer so far would be Ian, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Most of our big success on BGG and at conventions is all attributed to the artwork that Ian has done for the box cover, him sharing it and having his name on it. So that's been huge. And so I would say that's been a big part of it right now. But I would say early on, we didn't necessarily try to have any kind of influencers or anything like that. At least the first 2 years or so.
Cool. Yeah, I know. That's a good segue to this community question here. Kyle asks, can you talk about how artwork for the game has increased your community engagement? How have you used that to keep people motivated throughout your community?
Keep people motivated throughout the community. Well, I think it's what motivated everyone to click on it in the first place, on BGG specifically, because that's when we sort of quote unquote announced the game. Because lots of people, in this community, the community we're building, they of course are aware of the game, but the wider audience had no idea. When we posted created a page on BGG for the game and had Ian's box art there, and Ian's the one that posted the art, that's what got everyone to look at it. So that's what definitely brought in a bunch of new people. And certainly having having an attractive box art is going to catch people's eye. And as we saw, if enough people look at it and it starts to go on trending or on the hotness on BGG, then more people are clicking on it because they're wondering what it is. And then it just kind of builds on itself from there. So,
yeah. And I think you keep that excitement going by just releasing stuff slowly, which is nice because Ian did the box cover, then he's done the graphic design, then he's doing the art. And even when he sends us stuff in bulk, we never share it all at once, right? Like when he sent us the board, like the main board, like that was probably a week and a half or 2 weeks worth of posts because I did just this section of the board, just this section of the board, and really talking about it. And so I think just slowly revealing stuff can really keep people motivated and excited for the game. Because for you, when you get stuff, you just want to share it. It's like, oh, hey, look at all this stuff. But I think that's overwhelming to a community. I think communities just want to see small things to get excited about. So I think that's been something that we've seen other people do, which we've implemented, is that slow reveal process. I think it was in probably a crowdfunding nerds podcast. They were talking about like if you just get a bunch of images of like minis, I think is what they were talking about. It's just don't share them all at once. Like
Right.
take a front shot and post it today, and then tomorrow take a wide shot with it turned, and don't do them all at once. And so I think that's been really helpful. It's just that slow release keeps that motivation in our community going.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty crucial point that you just made there that I was going to bring up later on is a lot of the times when I've worked with game designers, they just, like you said, they're so excited. They just want to post all the things, and they do, and then they come back later like, now what? Right? So
Yep.
I've already given everything I can, and now I still have 5 months to figure that out. And so it's much harder to keep the people motivated. But yeah, so just like you said, slow release, little things at a time. Focus on especially game designers, focus on certain mechanism or something on the board.
Right.
Talk about that. And there's so many ways you could do that. And obviously, if you have any questions about how to do that, all three of us are really good at answering those types of things. So
I would say kind of on that, like I feel it too. It's like when I get something, I want to share all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's been most helpful is like having, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people that I do that with every time. So there's a few key people that whenever I get something, I send it to them all because I just want them to see it. Because it's one of those things where it's like you have information that you want other people to know about. And so whenever I send it to those people, that's kind of like the release of, okay, somebody else has seen it. They can enjoy it with me. But as far as the community, the big community, I can slowly do it, And so I think just making sure that you get that kind of feeling of that release of somebody else gets to enjoy it with you, which I think is great, having a team. Because when we get something, it's not just me looking at it. Like Dennis and Colton get to look at it as well. And so that's definitely really helpful, is having other people outside of the community to enjoy it with you. That way you can slowly do it with your community.
Yeah, it's like you're releasing that adrenaline. That adrenaline, right. So excited.
Right.
You're send it to the 4 people, and then you're good. Let's relax a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So I'm curious. I know you guys are on Facebook, but what other social media platforms are you using regularly? Probably Facebook and Discord, but can you describe which ones have been working better over others and which ones you've kind of steered away from for certain reasons?
Yeah, I would say steered away from, we haven't steered away from, it's just we just don't have time for, would be
right.
Yeah, we're implementing the whole thing, pick 1 or 2 and do them really well, as opposed to, we have an Instagram, I think we have a Twitter, we have a TikTok, but they just don't get used, right? And so I think maybe eventually when we can work on this full time, or we have somebody who can do that stuff full time, we obviously want to be on those platforms. And I think it's important to have an account. So if people want to tag you, they can tag you. But for us, yeah, like you said, Facebook and Discord have been our 2 biggest ones where we're actually actively engaging with people. And then over the last few months, when we released the box cover, we started interacting more with BGG. And that's kind of where Colton lives, interacting with people, doing the forums, writing the retrospectives. We were talking last night about some of these questions. And one thing I thought of was that BGG to me seems like it's a great community aspect, but it's almost like the people are looking in, whereas Facebook and Discord is the actual inside. And so that's where you can be really personal with people, I feel like, because I think you mentioned on BGG, right, you don't have names, right? Most people don't have their actual names. So you're not actually knowing who you're talking to. You're talking to a board gamer, right, who's interested in the game, and you can have some conversation.
I don't like that part.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel as personal as Instagram or Facebook or Discord. But I think, having accounts on all the platforms as much as you can is great. But choosing a few has been really helpful for us to really focus on.
Yeah. I know Discord is definitely so good. I never used to use Discord, but now I'm realizing how powerful it is for community. And so I may not be as active in there, but I need to start getting more active in that. And that's something that my 2024 goal is Discord, go all in, right? Because that's where the people are. Like it's either
Yeah. I
Facebook
feel
or
like we're
Discord.
still just scratching the surface of
I
Discord,
know, and there's
like
so
of
much.
what you can do with it.
Yeah. I know I missed Josh's question earlier. We're just going to touch on this briefly because we're not talking about manufacturing or anything, but I'm just curious, do you have a manufacturer, and at what point did you reach out to them?
So like we haven't necessarily agreed with the manufacturer yet or signed anything. We've still gotten quotes from people. We've gotten quotes from Panda, Long Pack, What's Games, Gameland, Hero Time, maybe another one or two. Like the two that are at the top of our list are Long Pack and Panda. Like we'd love to work with Panda. That would kind of be who we would like to land with. We're still waiting to get their quote back for like our updated components and stuff. But just from everybody that we've talked to, especially for first-time creators, like they're great to work with, but they're definitely more expensive. And so, as long as it's something that we can, manage, then I think we would love to work with Panda.
Yeah, I love Panda. Panda's top notch. Those are the two I always recommend is Panda and Long Pack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to hear that we're kind of in the same boat on that one. I want to switch over a little bit and talk about conventions because I personally love conventions. I don't have a lot of money to go to them, which is why I can't attend a lot of these conventions. But I really want to know, you guys have attended conventions. How has it positively or sometimes maybe negatively affected your brand and marketing strategies?
That's all you.
I mean, conventions are amazing. I think that every single one has been really worthwhile. It's a really good way of meeting the people that you want to meet, like other gamers, other designers. Just as a quick example with Proto ATL, that one specifically it's basically just designers and publishers there. I think there's maybe a few people come in just to play test, but and it was really focused around that. And so that was that's the whole reason that I met with TK, was because we were at the same convention. And then for more of like on a marketing side to try to hit the general public, than any of those Origins, Gen Con, that sort of thing. But even the smaller ones, like I know there's a bunch that TK and Colton go to that's closer to here. So I usually don't go to those because I live in Canada, so I only fly down for the big ones. But even just like some of these smaller things, you're making really, really personal connections there because you're meeting somebody in person. And I feel like everyone's always friendlier, more open, more willing to see something or whatever in person than they are online.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, you've got that connection with them, so you can continue to interact with them online. And other people will see those interactions and see like, oh, TK is such a nice guy. Look at everyone's talking with them. Maybe makes them more likely to interact or be a super fan, like you mentioned in the group, even if they haven't met us in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, conventions are so great, and it's just there's something about being behind the desk, behind the booth, and just like being able to not necessarily sell, but just be in the moment, be with the people, as opposed to being online and we're typing and we don't have the same reactions, right? So it's much more personal. So I love conventions, and I want to just briefly give some shout outs to some core people or sort of core companies that have helped you throughout this process so far. Obviously, you don't need to shout out everyone, but just give some names and stuff that people that have helped you out.
So I would say some of the biggest people have been like people who've been there from the beginning playtesting. Like you playtested early on. We had a group that we used to meet with weekly that was like John Dale, Matt Rodella, Nate, and Kevin. Who else was in that group? Matt Opal. So there's some core people that we played with a lot, and like we have a guy named Vasil who leads a lot of playtests on our Discord. So that's been great. I would say one of like the biggest kind of connections and relationships that's been helpful for us has been Shim Phillips. Early in the design process, I reached out to him. This was like before I even had any of his games. I didn't really know who he was. I was like, oh, it's a designer and he plays music. And so I messaged him and I was like, hey, can I chat with you? Can I do a video chat? I'd love to pick your brain about game design because I want to design games. He was like, sure. And so we chatted for an hour. And then like he helped us kind of develop the game. Like he's played it out a ton of times and given us a lot of feedback, and did a lot of our prototype iconography for us, just to help us out, which was super huge. Just giving us a nice looking prototype. And then when we were talking to him about art, we were like, hey, we'd love to have Ian do the art. He was like, oh, he's like, I know Ian, I'll connect you with Ian. And so that was huge for us because we had tried to reach out to Ian, but like he's so booked up.
Right.
And so just kind of like that's another instance of building those relationships and having those connections. And so huge shout out to Shim for just kind of helping us along the way, always being there to answer questions, because he's done the process, right? Started with Kickstarter, building a nice company. And so he's been great as far as getting feedback on different elements of the process. And then, of course, the Drawn to guys, Aiden and Simon, who just took Galactic Cruise to Essen, huge shout out to them. They've come on board to do like our distribution and Kickstarter fulfillment for all of our UK backers. And they, kind of like Shim, have just been answering tons of questions that we've had about, everything from development to shipping. And so they've been, hugely helpful along the way.
Yeah. I think, doesn't Shem have a new company or something he just started?
So it's like, it's a little orange rocket ship. I can't think of the name of it.
Right.
I know the icon. Starts with an A, Arcus or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Arcus or something.
Yeah, I think he partnered with some people who are also in New Zealand, some local people who started a company. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. There's a good community question here. Brandon asks, for Galactic Cruise, a rather large and big game, it has and will take a bit of time to design, develop, and create the game into a final product. This gives you plenty of time to grow your community around a single centralized product. What advice would you have for a publisher that produces smaller games with a smaller timeline that wants to do this type of marketing as well? Great question.
You want to answer?
That's a tough question.
I can't answer it from experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think like starting with smaller games can be helpful from the game design side, getting some stuff under your belt. But as far as like marketing goes, yeah, that's...
because we did that small card game that we had during COVID that we did on Kickstarter. Like we didn't do any marketing for it. It was just word of mouth. Like we had 100 backers, mostly people we knew. And so we didn't build much of a grassroots kind of marketing strategy with that one. I would just say, honestly, probably playtesting, right? Like that's a game that you can, whip out at a convention or at a local shop, spend 20 minutes on, and people can get the concept. And so you can cycle through a ton of, people and playtest. I would say if you've got a small game like that, you need to playtest it 500, 1,000 times before, you release it. Not just for, changing it, but just showing it to people, right? Because that's just free marketing that you can do.
Yeah, and I would assume that as long as the your different small games you're making aren't completely different in terms of like theme that would turn somebody off or something like that, then you should be able to just keep building game after game. Because if you like my first game, you'll probably like my second game, unless, like I said, like one of them is a family game and then one of them is like a adult game or something like that. Like you're making a raunchy party game or something, like where maybe there wouldn't be overlap. But you should be able to get the same people that were interested in your first game to continue to play test your new game. I got a new thing coming out.
Yeah, and I would think like as far as like timeline goes, where like we're kind of trying to build this really big grassroots and marketing for Galactic Cruise, because when we launch it, like we've really got to have a lot of people ready to back just because of the amount of money and funds that we're putting into the game up front. But for like a small game where you're not spending as much, like I would still aim for the trajectory, but like launch a game here, launch a game here, launch a game here, instead of just at the top, right? That way you can slowly build that trajectory of that community and following.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And for me, what I've learned from doing smaller stuff, smaller games, is pull off some freebies. Freebies are always great for people to enjoy. And, especially with a smaller game, because I think I know what game Brandon's talking about. He does a lot of these small box games. And I think with that, you don't have a lot of art usually. You don't have a lot of components usually. So you have to get a lot more creative. It is, I will say it's harder because you don't, you have a lack of stuff like that. But for me, smaller is almost easier to get the community implemented because there's some things like, for example, if you want to make characters, right? Have the community just make up your character for you. And it's like, you can do that with every little thing that in your small game. Like for me, I've made a small game before where I left all the characters open ended, all the names, all that stuff, and because I wanted everyone from the community to name it and do stuff like that. And I think if you're talking about the Game Crafter sale, I think that's what he might be talking about. I would start by playtesting, like these guys said. That's an easy way to give back more, but find other ways to give back as opposed to sharing your project out there. Um, Work a convention, talk to these people, and if you can't do that, go online, go into other people's posts, talk to them about their games first and foremost, and try to relate a little bit to see how they relate back to your game, and then ask feedback, ask questions. For you, it's going to be a lot of questions are really good at marketing as well. So, Brandon, we can talk about this again. I want to get more questions out, but that was a great question, and it's a tough question, right, to answer. So we'll talk about this later on. Colton says he also wants to shout out Bezier Games. So give them a shout out there.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the actual art of Grassroots. Can you describe? I think I'm going to go to the next one. Can you discuss any challenges or obstacles you've encountered while doing this type of marketing?
I think a lot of it is just having to remind yourself that it's okay that it's slow and that the numbers don't grow quickly. We're still, pretty low on our email list for what we want to hit. I think we're pushing 1,000, I think. And then we've got, 3,600 on Kickstarter and 700 in our Facebook group. And so that's just the culmination of 2.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not, we spent 1 month of ads and got all that. It's a very slow process.
Right.
And so I think just reminding yourself that each one of those numbers is important and valuable is important, just so you don't lose kind of your motivation. Because I think with Grassroots, because it takes so long, there are periods of I feel like nothing's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's getting done. I haven't sent out my email newsletter in 4 months, and I don't have anything to tell anybody, right? It can be very disheartening. And so I think that's a big struggle, is just it's okay to go slow. And so that's something that we try to remind ourselves of, because we see so many people who try to do it too fast, right? Hit Kickstarter too soon, try to hire too many people too quickly. Companies just try to grow so quickly that they outgrow themselves, and it's just, catastrophic. And so that's something we don't want to do. We just want to take our time and do the process as slow as we can to do the best that we can. But that is a big struggle, because it takes so long.
So there's a kind of an analogy that I like, and it's about, if you're trying to build a giant skyscraper, you have to build down first to build your foundation. So it takes a long time before you start actually going up. That kind of idea that it just basically, things take a long time to get going. You may not see that progress, but it's happening. And then once it starts going, then it's compounding on everything you've done. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing at a faster rate the more time you put into it.
Yeah, and again, we talking about super fans. I'm reminded of Dice Throne. I remember when they just had started playtesting from the original Dice Throne, and they've built it up from the ground up, and now they have super fans that will back Dice Throne constantly, right? Where they're at almost 4 million or something crazy now, and that's insane. But they started with the Grassroots stuff. They started just going to conventions, just playtesting a little bit, and then obviously, Dice Throne came out and did all that awesome stuff. But so let's go a little bit back to the burnout, right? We've all experienced some sort of burnout. I know I definitely have. Can you talk about what each of you guys are doing specifically to overcome burnout, and any advice for those designers who are having burnout right now?
I think for me, because I love new things, I love playing new games. I would rather play a new game than a game that I love, just because I love the new experience. So I love meeting new people and building new relationships. And so that's what kind of gives me that excitement. And so personally for me, it's scheduling, right? If I schedule a new playtest, I know I've got to fix something. And making that thing new and getting to try it out then becomes exciting. Because, after every playtest for the first 100, it's just you end the playtest and you're like, man, this game is terrible. and you're like, like, what do I do?
Dark horse.
And so like you're always challenged to like put it aside. You're like, oh, it's not good. It's not good enough. And so for me, it's like, well, I've got another playtest scheduled for tomorrow night. So I've got to figure out what's not good and fix it. That way I'm not playing the same game tomorrow night. And so it's just having those things scheduled has been really helpful for me.
I think part of the answer was actually in your question where you said you guys. I think having a team
100%.
is very helpful so that, if one of us isn't feeling it or whatever, somebody else can step in, or just being able to talk to each other, having somebody to bounce ideas off or just even vent potentially. I think having a team is important.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's like my burnout very much whenever it does happen is because I'm usually by myself doing all the things right by myself. And I'm always jealous of you guys because you have a team, and you and Colton specifically are close enough to each other that it's awesome to have someone to bounce ideas off constantly and stuff like that. And so what I found for myself is, especially in the modern day of social media, is just I take a few days off entirely, don't do anything online or even offline. Normally when I'm offline, I still go and do design or something like that. I just take a couple days, and I realize that social media will be there when I get back, right? So I go and bike, go do something. It sounds really dumb, but just go outside and walk or think about the other things that you love as hobbies. Because like game design and games are one thing, but life, there's a whole other world out there of things that we know you enjoy. So try something else and then come back to it, and you'll find that burnout is a lot easier to overcome if you go back to other things you enjoy as well. That's something
I would say, like, kind of diving deeper into scheduling stuff for me. I think a lot of that is not scheduling just stuff about our game. Like that's where I love playtesting other people's stuff comes in. Because like I may be burned out on Galactic Cruise and I don't want to work on it right now. But like I play your game, I play somebody else's game, and then for some reason I'm reinvigorated to come back and look at Galactic Cruise. And so I think just continuing to playtest other people's stuff and see their ideas and coming up with new ideas to help them with their stuff just personally really helps me. And so I think having stuff scheduled, not only for Galactic Cruise but other things is super helpful for me.
Yeah, I think the more you got your creative juices flowing, solving something for somebody else's game is going to potentially trigger something in your head to fix something else that you were thinking about at a later time.
Right.
For me, it's usually as I'm trying to fall asleep. And then I'm like, I need to wake up and write this down.
Yeah. Yeah. And my favorite thing about that is, you play test other people's games, and not only do you help them solve some problems maybe, but you also get new ideas, because like we can get so stuck on our own games and like, oh, we know these mechanisms, but there's so much creative juice, like you said, out there, and new ideas, new mechanisms that you couldn't have thought of before. And seeing playtesting that, it's like, oh, now I have an idea for another game I'm trying to fix using this core system. That's actually what happened with the Chef's Apprentice, like my game that's on Kickstarter right now. I had this game and I was so set on it, but then I was like, I don't know if I like the drafting system. And so I played a couple other games and went to Protospiel, played someone else's game. And then I was like, wait, it's like a light bulb switched. And I switched the drafting system entirely, and it was 10 times better. And it was because of that inspiration of playing other people's games that I came back to my own and was like, awesome, this is great.
Also, it's so close to funding. I checked just a few minutes ago to see if it was like funded while we were talking.
It might be.
It's so close.
It's like we're at 14,429, so it'll fund. I'm not too worried, but
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so I know marketing data is key for a lot of it, but Grassroots is kind of hard to have data, right? So is there any metric or KPI, key performance indicator, that you guys are using to like measure the success of your community, or do you kind of just you're seeing your growth in numbers and that's kind of what you're gauging?
I would say early on, like it was Facebook, or like numbers in our Facebook group and email list. Even though they were small, those numbers were growing. But I think the biggest thing that's most encouraging for us is just feedback. like hearing people talk about the game, hearing people share experiences of getting to see it at conventions, or just watching a video of upcoming games at Gen Con or
Mm.
Essen, and them just being excited about it. And so like I think a lot of people use the word buzz, right? Like there's a lot of buzz about the game, and so I think that's something that's kind of helped us measure. Like we're not necessarily writing it down or noting it, but just like making sure that that buzz is continuously happening in different areas, right? And if it's not, then trying to kind of engage with those areas to help
Mhm.
kind of foster it. Um,
Yeah, I think the board game geek hotness thing, that was a good measurement tool right there. Of you
right,
didn't really need to know the numbers, but you were on the hotness. Like that's a
right,
good measuring tool there because you're there, right? So that, and then of course, like you said, the Facebook group is always a big, for grassroots. You can kind of see what's happening, but not
right,
only the people joining, but it's the engagement, right? Are they interacting with your content? Like, for example, we were talking earlier, post a little bit about your game like, instead of all of it. Are they interacting with that little piece? Like, you're like, hey, this mechanism is cool. We did this, blah, blah, blah. Are they commenting like, oh, that's cool, or a great job? And I was looking through your page earlier, and there was a couple of times where I saw people were just like, "This is cool, great work." And that's the kind of thing that really helps you measure. It's how many people are interacting with the content on a
right.
regular basis.
Because they're interested; they're not just
Right,
there.
right. So that's great. Justin says, "Hey TK, welcome, Justin."
Hello.
Bob has a good question here. Let me go ahead and do this. So I think he's talking about the team, the Kinson Key team. What steps did you guys take to sort out whether your team was a good fit to become a reality? I've been trying to find the right people for a long time now, and I'm not trying to rush it, but I do want a team in the long run. I know it takes time to develop that relationship, but did you guys do anything specific? Was it a long process? Was there contracts and misunderstandings? How do you guys meet up to go over projects? So, long question, but a lot to unwrap there.
Yeah, so I was stuck with Colton. That wasn't much of a choice. So I didn't, but I think I did. I think I did well. Like he's a good partner. Um, and so yeah, so just because we all grew up together, like everything we did, like we made movies, we made games, stupid recipes, like just we were always anytime we were doing something, we did it together.
Something creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like we were both creative, and so anytime we were, doing business things or just fun things, we were together, and so that was kind of a natural fit because we both
Mm.
love games. And then yeah, like I said earlier, Dennis just kind of slowly progressed. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to kind of talk about from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't even like on purpose. Like, we met at Proto ATL. I played Galactic Cruise, an older version of it. I really liked it. I brought 3 different games. You played those. You liked them. We just hit it off immediately. So like, I was immediately friends with TK, and then joined the Discord server. Was just playtesting with all sorts of people that I'd met, both TK and through the server, so other people there. And then just over time, like I was always playtesting and helping them out with Galactic Cruise. And I just really liked the sessions that we'd spend after a playtest working on stuff.
Mm.
And I wasn't like I was working on it because I was friends with them. Like I wasn't expecting anything from it. And I just enjoyed doing it. And then so when we kept doing that over time, and I realized like because in the past, like all the different games that I've designed, I've just done by myself, and I still had fun doing that. But I was like, it's that much better to like bounce these ideas off people and come up with stuff and see what works. And so it's just we just kind of naturally progressed into a point where it was like, hey, I think we should make this official. Like, let's go all in and make it happen, and get the whole thing rolling. So I guess like when I first met them, I had no intention of I wasn't like I'm going to join this company. It just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was just doing things that I like doing, and so yeah, I don't know if that super helps with your question about how to find somebody, but maybe just like find somebody that you're naturally connecting with, and if neither side is trying to force it, then I think you can.
I think that's why like building connections and networking with people is so important.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the old adage of like if you're familiar with like songwriting and whatever, they used to say that it's like every 100 songs you write, you have a good song.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can kind of translate that, right? It's like every 100 people that you connect with, maybe that person is somebody that you might like to work with or something, right? And so I think the more people you meet, the more people you network with, the more chances you are to run into somebody or come in contact with somebody that you could work with, right?
Mhm.
Like if I hadn't gone to Proto ATL and Dennis hadn't gone to Proto ATL to
Yep.
network with people, like this wouldn't have happened. And so I
Yeah.
think just trying to put yourself in positions to where you're meeting new people and talking with new people as often as you can, whether that's going to conventions or playtesting other people's games or whatever it is, I think just creates more opportunities for those connections to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, like, again, like, team is great. Having a team and knowing the right fit is tough. But like you said, you did it the right way. You weren't actually looking for anything. You were just playing the game the way you want, and you decided, oh, we would be a good fit, to jump onto a team, and now you guys are just crushing it in all of the ways. So we have 51, I think. Okay, I just have a few more questions here, and then we'll talk about the campaign. Galactic Cruise, not necessarily the campaign, but the game itself. So like knowing your audience is pretty crucial. Can you describe like who your target audience is and like what the pain points they have that you're trying to solve?
Well, our target audience is definitely the heavier game players. People that like Lacerda and that sort of thing. And so I get also like I think BGG the heavier your game is, the more important your presence on BGG is. So that's kind of a side thing, but I think with the lighter games, then maybe Facebook or like just you can hit more mass market. But for a game like ours, like we need to be able to hit those people that are going to be wanting to play those games, and like they're going to have all those people are going to know about BGG and be on there,
Right.
And kind of so you'll need to have a presence there. But the pain points. So I think one of the things that we kind of have tried to do with Galactic Cruise is to make it interesting for anybody that's kind of like me, that like I'm not quite the heavier the better. Like there's plenty of really light games that I love, but in general, like I typically like the heavier games. But we want to make it accessible for those that like are maybe just trying to dip their toes in. And so a lot of the things, the kind of, maybe pain points for them are some of there's kind of, I like to joke about it a bit, but it's kind of like the older school Euro stuff of like, I don't know if I want to go as far as calling it punishing players, but just like making things difficult, like, making the economy tighter, making this, this thing a little bit meaner or whatever. So if anybody that's played Galactic Cruise, you'll notice that everything's like a lot friendlier. And I think that makes it a little more accessible for people. But at the same time, it's still really interesting for people like me that really like those harder games as well, because I can still optimize and try to do more with less, but it's not as mean for everyone.
Fritz, welcome. Just happened to open YouTube and there's a connect happening. Lucky day. Yep, Thursdays at 1. Brandon had a good question, so I just want to ask this question: what were your gateway games? Because that's always nice to hear.
So Dennis has much more of a gaming history than I do. So I played Catan for the first time in college. When was that? I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And that was about it. Like before that, I had played your regular stuff like Monopoly, Clue, those kinds of things. Was a huge Trouble fan growing up. And so when I played Catan for the first time, I was like, this is amazing. But I couldn't get it anywhere. Like their stores didn't have it. Of course, Target didn't have anything. Even local game stores didn't have it. So I had to order it online. And I ordered it, Seafarers, and Cities and Nights, and the 5 and 6 player expansion. And when I got that in the mail, like 3 weeks later or whatever, I had a friend come over. It was Drew, not Colton. For some reason, I don't know why.
You have two friends.
I have two friends.
Two friends.
And we played it 9 times in a row.
Jeez.
When we got it in the mail that night. Just because, like, it was like this is crazy. Like, this is amazing. And so, but then that's all I played for a long time. And then when COVID hit, like I said, we got into the game design aspect a little more, and we were like, man, there are other games out there. And so I think it may have been a wedding gift that Colton got. He got Carcassonne, and that was the first game I'd ever played with a meeple. And then he ordered Viticulture, and that was my first worker placement game. And then the first bigger game I bought was Terraforming Mars. And so, like, I would say Viticulture was hugely influential just because of worker placement. And then Terraforming Mars, I was like, man, this, like, I can actually really think a lot about this, and I love it. And that was kind of the first heavier game that I played. So those were kind of my gateways, just coming from Catan up to Terraforming Mars. But the heaviness kind of happened really quickly over the last few years.
So I think this one is an interesting one for me because I probably don't share this gateway game with almost anyone else. So I had played other designer games before I knew designer, like what a designer game meant. So like one of the earlier ones that I really liked was Bonanza by Uwe Rosenberg. Okay. But at the time, I didn't even pay attention to who the designer was. I was just playing a fun bean game. And then I'd played like Robo Rally and stuff. So I'd played stuff before, but none of those I would count as my gateway because I played them on occasion, but it didn't get me into gaming, into board games. Like I played board games my whole life, kind of like TK mentioned, with your typical stuff that everyone plays growing up. But my actual like gateway game to now we play every single week was actually a game called Android. So this is not Android Netrunner.
Okay, I was like not Netrunner. It's different.
It was Fantasy Flights. This is like where they created the Android universe, and it's like this super heavy game that takes like 4 hours, and so like we had never played anything like this before, and I think that's literally what got me into it. And I'll say that there are aspects of the game that are cool, but I don't even really like the game. But it got me into board games because my whole group, which just for context, maybe this might make sense of things. Like basically everyone is like a computer engineer, computer programmer, or something like that.
Nerds.
Exactly. So we were like the first time that we learned the game, we're reading the rule book, and it took us like 8 hours to learn the game.
Oh my god!
We had no gaming experience like this. And so the reason that it got me into gaming was because I was like, I didn't know board games could do any of this. Like, this is ridiculous. This is insane. And so we're like, what else is out there? And then basically, like the next week, we all went out. We each bought a different game. And then over the next while, we kept buying stuff. And then after that, I was ordering like...
You were in the deep end.
Yeah. I was getting shipments of games every month or two.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of the rest is history. We've been playing all sorts of stuff. So that was my gateway game, which again, like might seem kind of weird. That game has like multiple layers, multiple games in one. It's not the heaviest game I played anymore, but that's what really got me into it. I don't know if I don't think playing I played that before Catan, but had I played Catan or Carcassonne, I don't know that would have drawn me in. I think I needed that heavy game to be like, board games can do something different, and that's what got me into everything else. So that's my gateway story.
Yeah, I always love to hear that because everyone's answer is so different. It's like for me, I've said this many times, but for me, I was a Magic player pretty thoroughly, a while back, and I was trying to find, I wanted my wife to play Magic the Gathering. Okay. And she tried it. She was like, this is so confusing and it was too complex for her. And so I was like, man, okay, I want to find something. And I was looking through Target one day and I looked over at a game called Unstable Unicorns. And I was like, okay, what is this? It's rainbow colored. So I picked it up because I like color, as you can probably tell. I picked the box up, turned it around, and it said the word triggered on it. And I was like, wait a second, triggered ability, targeting. I was like, okay, we're getting this game right now. And we played it. I was hooked. Oh my God, the game was so fun. We played it 2 players, right? So it wasn't as grindy as some of the games that can be. But we played it and I was immediately like, what? Games can be like this? This is totally a different thing than I thought games could be. And that game actually is what jumped me into looking at things on Facebook, like board game stuff. And then I found the Board Game Design Lab, and the rest is history because of that game. So I'm here basically because of Unstable Unicorns. So thanks for that. Awesome company. But wow. Let's just. I want to ask this question since it is spooky season. Favorite Halloween games or spooky season games?
I don't have any. I don't.
I mean, I have Betrayal at House on the Hill, which is fine. I don't love it. It's like it's an experience with the right group, but don't expect it to work perfectly. A lot of times the scenarios kind of break or whatever, but that might be my spookiest game. I guess I have Mysterium. Yeah, I don't know if I have too many spooky games.
Yeah, it's like that theme for some reason.
Yeah,
like any of the Halloween stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like Horrified. That's the one spooky game.
I played that one once. That was pretty good. Yeah, I don't think I've really played many.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. We got through all the questions, and it's an hour exactly. So thank you guys so much for hopping on. Before we go, I am going to do a shameless plug because my game is on Kickstarter currently. So if any of you are interested or been following me from the beginning, I'm going to
fund it
up here.
One person could fund it. $571, all it takes.
So yeah, this game was great, and like you said, Protospiel ATL was so crucial to you guys. Protospiel Minnesota was so crucial to me. That's actually what changed this game to be basically publishable.
I played it with you there.
Yeah, and Dennis, you were part of that solution to the fixes, and it was just great. It was awesome. After Protospiel, I left like, okay, I'm gonna pitch this game, and I felt really good about it. Pitched it like that week and got it signed almost that next week after. So thanks to Protospiel and everything. If you want to check it out, it's The Chef's Apprentice on Kickstarter. My first game design, first of many, hopefully. And yeah, but anyways, thank you guys so much for hopping on. It's been great, and we will talk to you later. Good luck with Galactic Cruise.
Yeah, thanks for having us.